How do you react when your daughter-in-law tells you to sign your company over to her child and go grow old alone? What do you do when everyone thinks you are a tired widower with no fight left, just waiting for instructions? I stayed quiet, watched them plan my exit, and waited for the right day to let my lawyer read the DNA result in front of the whole board. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Graham Adler. I am 63 years old, and I built my company with my wife, Helena, over many years. After Helena's long illness, the house became quiet in a way I did not expect. It was not only quiet in the rooms, it was quiet inside people. They spoke to me like I was already fading. That change did not happen in one day. It arrived in small steps. A look that moved past me. A conversation that did not include me. A plan made for my own good without asking me first. On a Monday morning, I stood in my kitchen and made coffee the way I always did. 2 cups, out of habit. I poured the second cup and then stopped. I rinsed it and put it back in the cabinet. I watched the sink water run and tried to keep my face calm. I heard the front door open. My son Eric came in, holding his phone, moving fast. His wife Lana followed with my grandson Max. Max ran to me like a little storm, arms up, asking to be picked up. I lifted him and felt his small weight against my chest. That part still felt real. Lana did not greet me the way she used to. She smiled, but the smile stayed on her mouth, not her eyes. She said the morning was busy and that she had meetings later. She talked about the company like it was a project in her hands. She said we needed to tidy things now. She said people were asking questions. She said investors and partners did not like uncertainty. She said it would be wise to move the company into Eric's name and then into Max's name later. She said it like she was helping me, like she was cleaning a closet for an older relative. I said I understood that people wanted clarity. I said the company had rules and we would follow the rules. I kept my voice even. I watched her eyes for any sign of respect. I did not see it. Eric did not correct her. He poured himself coffee and stared at his phone. He said Lana was only trying to reduce stress. He said this was a sensitive time. He said we should keep things smooth. Lana looked at the house, at the kitchen, at the chairs, like she was measuring what belonged to her now. Then she looked at me and said I should not carry so much pressure. She said I should focus on rest. She said the next generation should lead. She used that phrase often. The next generation. She said it like a key that could open any door. I nodded. I kissed Max's hair and put him down. Max asked if we could go to the office later so he could see the big machines. I told him maybe another day. His face fell, and he ran to Eric. When they left, I stood in the kitchen and listened to the silence again. My coffee had gone cold. I drank it anyway. At the company, I parked in my usual spot. It had my name on a small sign. That sign had been there for years. In the last few months, people walked past it like it was just decoration. The building smelled like oil and metal, the same as always. The machines still hummed with steady work. The work did not change. The people did. My assistant Jenna greeted me at the front desk. She stood up quickly, as if she wanted to show respect with her body because words felt risky. She said good morning and asked if I needed anything. She looked tired. I could tell she had been asked to do extra tasks without extra thanks. I asked if the production schedule was stable. She said yes. Then she hesitated. She said Lana had been asking for access to older files. She said Lana wanted to streamline the archive. Jenna said it carefully, like she did not want to plant worry in my head. I thanked her and walked to my office. My office had a glass wall facing the hall. Years ago, that glass wall made people feel close to me. Now it made it easy to see me sitting alone. There was a photo of Helena on my shelf. In the photo, she was smiling at something out of frame. That was how she was in life, too. She had a private smile, like she knew something good was coming. I sat down and opened my notebook. I kept the same notebook style each year, a habit from old work days. On the first page, I wrote short lists. In the past, those lists were about growth and new hires and equipment. Now the lists were about meetings, family calls, and legal names I had not thought about in a long time. There was a knock at my door. Eric came in, followed by Lana. Eric said they were doing a quick walkthrough with a consultant. He said they wanted my blessing before moving forward. He said it like a joke, but the joke was not kind. Lana stepped in without waiting for an invitation. She looked around my office and said it was classic. She said we should preserve it as a founder corner for company history. She said employees like stories. She said investors like stories too. I asked her what the consultant wanted. She said the consultant wanted to map decision flow. She said the board needed to see a clear chain of command. She said it was time to show that Eric was the operational lead. She said I could be the face when needed, but the company needed a clean structure. I asked who asked for that. She said the board wanted it. She said certain partners wanted it. She did not name anyone. She did not have to. She said it with confidence, and confidence can replace proof if no one challenges it. I said the board would decide in a formal meeting. I said we would follow the bylaws. I used that word on purpose. Bylaws. It reminded her that this was not a family group chat. Lana smiled again, thin and neat. She said, of course. She said she respected structure. She said she was trained in structure. Eric shifted his weight like he was uncomfortable. He looked at me, then looked away. He said we were all on the same side. He said we should avoid conflict. I told him I was not looking for conflict. I said I was looking for clarity. I watched Lana's eyes. That word seemed to annoy her. After they left, I walked the operations floor. I greeted people I had known for years. Some smiled and looked relieved. Some nodded quickly and returned to work like they did not want to be seen talking to me too long. Near the break area, I heard voices from a small conference room. The door was partly open. I did not stand there to listen. I simply heard my name, and I heard Lana say something about founder dependency. I heard her say the company must not be held hostage by one person's mood. Held hostage was a strong phrase. It was also unfair. I had never used the company as a weapon. I had used it as a home for other people's paychecks and families. But words like that can reshape reality if repeated often enough. I kept walking. That evening, there was a family dinner at a restaurant. It was a private room, the kind with soft lights and heavy curtains. It was meant to be respectful. It did not feel respectful. 2 board members were there because Lana had invited them. She said it would blend family and business. She said it would show unity. I knew what it really was. It was an audience. There were relatives, too. Helena's sister Marianne sat near me. She held my hand briefly under the table when no one looked. That small gesture helped me keep my face steady. Lana ordered wine for the table. I did not drink. She did not ask. She assumed. She spoke to the waiter like she was the host. Eric let her. People follow the person who acts like the host. When the food arrived, Lana stood up with her glass. She said she wanted to say a few words. The room quieted. Even the waiter stopped moving for a moment, as if the air had shifted. Lana said Helena was a wonderful woman. She said Helena built a legacy. She said we should honor Helena by making bold decisions. She said uncertainty was the enemy of progress. She said the company needed to move forward with youthful leadership. Then she looked at me. She said I deserved peace. She said I had carried enough. She said it was time for me to step back and let Eric lead fully. She said we should transfer the company into Eric's name. She said later it could be placed into Max's name as the true future. She used the phrase true future like it was a crown. I saw one board member glance at the other. I saw Marianne stiffen. I saw Eric's mouth open as if he might speak, then close again. Lana kept going. She said I could keep my home, for now. She said we could set up a monthly allowance so I would not worry. She said it would be generous and dignified. Dignified. That word hit me harder than an insult would have. It meant she was already planning the shape of my life like a small budget line. People were quiet. No one challenged her. Some people avoided my eyes. Some looked at me with pity. Pity is not respect. Pity is a kind of distance. When she finished, she lifted her glass toward me like she expected me to accept the plan as a gift. I placed my napkin on the table and looked at her. I did not raise my voice. I did not shake. I said I appreciated her concern. I said the company was not a personal item to be handed around. I said it had rules and obligations. I said we would follow the proper process. Lana's smile stayed, but it tightened. She said of course, and she said paperwork could handle everything. She said this meeting was simply to align expectations. She said we should not make it complicated. Eric finally spoke. He said we all wanted what was best. He said I should not feel attacked. He said Lana's tone was only direct because she cared. I told Eric I heard him. I told him I was fine. I told him I would attend any formal meeting the board scheduled. The rest of dinner felt like acting. People talked about small things. They asked Max about school. They praised Lana's initiative. They asked me if I was sleeping well. The questions were polite, but the room felt like it had already decided I was a problem to manage. When we left the restaurant, Marianne walked beside me to the parking area. She did not speak much. She only said Helena trusted me for a reason. She said I should remember that. I drove home alone. The streetlights made short flashes across the windshield. I kept my hand steady on the wheel. I did not cry. I did not shout. I just felt a clean, cold understanding settle in. At home, I placed my keys on the counter and stood in the dark kitchen. My phone buzzed. I looked down and saw a message from Patricia Singh, our longtime lawyer. She wrote that she needed to speak with me when I was alone and that Helena's last instructions mattered. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I set the phone face down on the counter and made myself a cup of tea, slow and careful, as if I had all the time in the world. Over the next few days, I kept thinking about how easily Lana spoke in that restaurant. She spoke like the company was already packed into boxes, ready to be moved into her living room. People often think power is loud, but real power is quiet. Real power is when everyone else stops questioning you. I tried to be honest with myself. This was not only about one dinner, it was a pattern. It had been building for years. When Eric first brought Lana to our home, I liked her. She was quick with words. She asked questions. She looked at Helena and listened. She said she respected strong women. She said she wanted a family that worked as a team. At that time, those words sounded good. Helena also liked her. Helena had a practical mind. She did not trust easily, but she respected people who were prepared. Lana was prepared. She had plans. She spoke about career, stability, and how she wanted children one day. She said she wanted Eric to have something solid to grow into. I remember one early moment clearly. We were in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I now drank cold coffee alone. Eric was outside on a call. Lana helped Helena clear plates. She looked at the family photo wall and asked how we built the company from nothing. Helena explained it in simple steps. Long days, careful spending, stubborn patience. Lana listened and nodded. Then she said she loved the story and that stories were valuable. She said investors and clients liked stories. At the time, I thought she meant respect. Later, I understood she meant packaging. For many years, Eric was a good son. He worked hard. He learned the machines and the people. He stayed late. He cared about quality. He also needed approval. That was always his weak spot. Helena and I tried to give him confidence without making him arrogant. We wanted him steady, not loud. When Lana entered his life, she did not make him arrogant at first. She made him hungry. There is a difference. Hunger can be useful when it pushes you to improve, but hunger can also make you forget who fed you. In the company, she started as an outsider. She came to events, smiled, asked people what they did. She remembered names. People like that. Then she began to offer help. She said she could improve communication, refresh branding, modernize the website, and tighten contracts with suppliers. She spoke as if she was doing us a favor. Helena supported some of it. Helena was not stuck in the past. She liked good ideas, but Helena also had a line. She believed people should earn influence step by step. Lana did not like steps, she liked leaps. It began with small changes in meetings. In the past, when we had management talks, people looked at Helena and me first. We set the tone, we asked questions, we listened, we made decisions slowly. Eric spoke after us. That was normal. After Lana started joining more meetings, she spoke early and often. She would finish Eric's sentences. She would repeat my points in different words, then look around like she had invented them. She would ask the room if everyone agreed before I'd even finished thinking. The first time it happened, I assumed it was nerves. The second time, I assumed she was excited. The third time, I realized it was strategy. She also started changing the story of the company in small ways. At a client dinner, she introduced Eric as the person who really runs things now. She said Helena and I were the roots, but the real tree was the next generation. Clients laughed politely, some nodded. They wanted to stay friendly with whoever would hold the pen later. I could feel the shift, not in one big crash, but in a slow slide. Then Helena's health started to get worse. Those months were hard. I spent more time in medical waiting rooms than in my own office. I still came to the company, but less. I trusted Eric. I trusted our leadership team. I told myself this was temporary. I told myself respect would return when life returned to normal. But normal did not return. In the hospital, Helena tried to stay strong. She did not like being seen as fragile. She liked facts. She liked control. Even in that room, she would ask about orders and delivery schedules. She would ask about payroll. She would ask if Omar had the numbers stable. One afternoon, Eric and Lana brought Max to visit. Max ran to Helena's bed with a drawing. Helena smiled in a way I had not seen in days. Lana stood near the window, talking softly to Eric, like she was coaching him. A nurse came in to check the chart and confirm details. A doctor also entered later and asked a few routine questions. He looked at Max's file because Helena had asked about general family records. The doctor mentioned a medical marker, the kind hospitals use for compatibility. He said it out loud without meaning anything personal. He just spoke like doctors do, direct and quick. Helena's eyes changed for a moment. She did not say anything. She simply asked the doctor to repeat the marker. He repeated it. Helena nodded, slow. Then she changed the subject to her medication schedule. When the doctor left, I asked Helena if everything was fine. She told me it was fine. She said doctors sometimes talk too fast. She said I should not worry. But her hand stayed tight around mine for a long time. That night, when Eric and Lana were gone, Helena told me something I never forgot. She said people show their real faces when they think time is short. She said I should not let anyone rush me. She said the company was built on respect, not performance. I asked if she meant Lana. Helena did not answer directly. She said Eric had a good heart, but he could be led. She said I needed to be steady, even if people tried to make me feel small. After Helena was no longer with us, I did what I always do when life hits hard. I focused on tasks. I kept the company moving. I answered calls. I met Omar and the department heads. I signed what I understood. I asked questions when I did not. That practical focus gave Lana space. At the office, she started arriving like she owned the air. She wore sharp suits and walked fast. She gave Jenna extra tasks, then acted annoyed when they were not finished instantly. She spoke to managers as if she was their direct supervisor, even when she was not. In the open plan area, I watched a young supervisor stand up when Lana approached, like a student when a strict teacher enters. Lana asked him why a project timeline looked slow. He explained a supplier delay. Lana told him delays were excuses. She told him leadership meant no excuses. Then she smiled and said she was only pushing him because she believed in him. People laughed nervously. That supervisor later avoided my eyes. In the small conference room, I attended a planning meeting where a consultant was present. Lana sat beside the consultant like a co-host. She spoke about transition risk and founder dependency. She said the company needed to show the market that it could survive without me. Without me. She said it as if I was a weather event, not a person. I asked the consultant what data supported the claim that our clients wanted that. The consultant hesitated and said the recommendation was a general best practice. Lana jumped in and said best practices were there for a reason. She said old habits were dangerous. I said old habits built the company and kept people paid through bad years. I said not every best practice fits every reality. My tone stayed calm. Lana smiled and said she admired my passion, then said we should not take it personally. That phrase became one of her favorites. Do not take it personally. She used it right after making something personal. Eric started acting different too. He used to come to my office and ask for advice. Now he came with Lana, or he came late, or he sent short messages instead of talking. When I asked him why he did not correct Lana in meetings, he said he did not want to create tension. He said the company needed unity. He said I should not make it a contest. I told him I did not want a contest. I told him I wanted respect. He nodded, but his eyes looked away. That was new. Eric used to look me in the eyes. The worst part was how Lana spoke about me when she thought I was not listening. One day, I walked past the small conference room again and heard laughter. I heard my name. I heard Lana say I was emotional because of recent events, and that it was natural. She said people should be gentle with me and keep big decisions away from me until I settled like dust. I stepped into the doorway. The room went quiet. Lana turned and smiled like nothing had happened. She asked if I needed something. I said no. I said I was just checking the schedule. I looked at the faces around the table. Some were embarrassed. Some looked relieved that I was calm. No one apologized. Back in my office, I sat with Helena's photo and tried to understand how I had become a background figure in my own life. I remembered the nights Helena and I spent balancing accounts at our kitchen table. I remembered the risks we took. I remembered the time we mortgaged our house to keep the company alive during a hard year. I remembered promises we made to each other about protecting what we built. Now a person who married into the family was speaking as if she was the author of our story, and my own son was letting it happen. That was the pattern. Slow erosion, polite smiles, public speeches that pushed me to the edge of the frame, and the more I stayed calm, the more they treated my calm as weakness. One afternoon, Jenna brought me a stack of papers and hesitated before leaving. She said Lana had asked her to create a new meeting series. She said it was labeled Succession Alignment. Jenna said my name was listed as an attendee, not as chair. Jenna looked uncomfortable as she said it, like she was delivering a bad message that she did not agree with. I thanked her and told her she did the right thing by keeping me informed. Jenna nodded quickly and left. I stared at the meeting title on the top page. It was written in clean, confident text, like a decision already made. I could almost hear Lana's voice behind it, smooth and certain. I did not tear the paper. I did not call anyone in anger. I did not storm into Eric's office. I simply placed it in my notebook and closed the cover. Then I sat in silence for a long time, listening to the steady hum of the building, and I began to accept one clear truth. If I kept acting like this was only grief and misunderstanding, They would keep rewriting my role until I was nothing more than a name on a plaque. The next weekend, Eric asked if he could stop by the house with Lana. He said they wanted to go over a few practical things. He said it would help everyone relax. His tone was soft, like he was asking for a small favor, not opening a new chapter. I agreed. I told him the living room was fine. I made tea and set out cups, even though my hands felt slow. When I heard their car, I stood up and reminded myself to stay steady. I did not need to win a conversation. I needed to see what they wanted, clearly. They came in like a pair with one plan. Eric carried a slim laptop bag. Lana carried a thick folder with sticky tabs on the side. She did not sit down right away. She walked around the room, looking at photos on the wall, as if she was reviewing property she might manage later. Then she sat across from me and placed the folder on the coffee table. She opened it with care, like the papers were already official. She said she had spoken to a firm she trusted. She said they had prepared documents to make the transition smooth. She said smooth was better for the company and better for the family. Eric nodded along. He kept his hands folded. He looked at the floor more than he looked at me. Lana began explaining each item in a calm, clear voice. She said the first document would let Eric handle day-to-day approvals without delays. She said the second would adjust voting power so the board could act fast. She said the third would set up the company to transfer cleanly to Max later. She said she was making sure I would not be stressed by constant decisions. The more she spoke, the more it sounded like she was describing a person who could not tie his own shoes. She slid the first page toward me and placed a pen beside it. She said this was a standard step. She said it would protect me. She said I had done enough. I picked up the first page and read slowly. I did not pretend to read. I read it. I traced the lines with my eyes and listened to my own breathing. The words were clean and polite, but the meaning was not kind. It was not only about reducing my workload. It was about shifting control. It was about making my role ceremonial. It was about removing my ability to slow things down. I placed the page back on the table. I set the pen down next to it. I told Lana I understood her intentions. I told her I would not sign anything today. Her smile held for a moment. Then it tightened. She said there was no reason to delay. She said the board wanted this. She said partners wanted it. She said a good leader knew when to step back. She said refusing would make the company look unstable. I told her the company had a legal structure. I told her the structure existed for a reason. I told her I would only review documents with our longtime lawyer, Patricia Singh. I said Patricia had advised Helena and me for years, and I would not change that now. Lana acted surprised, as if I had said something unreasonable. She said Patricia was fine, but she said Patricia was close to me and might be biased. She said it was better to use a neutral firm with modern experience. I told her neutrality did not replace knowledge of our history. I told her Patricia knew our agreements, our bylaws, and our obligations. I told her that was not bias, it was context. Eric finally spoke. He said we should not turn this into a fight. He said Lana was only trying to help. He said we could compromise by letting me take the folder overnight, then talk again in a few days. Lana shook her head and said overnight was not necessary. She said I could sign now and then, we could still review details later. She said this was just a framework. That was the moment the line felt clear. If the document was only a framework, she would not be pushing so hard for my signature in my own living room. If it was harmless, she would not be bringing a pen like a final tool. I told her I would not sign now. I repeated it in a calm tone. I did not apologize for it. Lana leaned back slightly and looked at me like she was changing tactics. She said the world moved fast. She said I was not in the same energy stage as the company anymore. She said Eric and she had a family to protect. She said I should not hold the future hostage because I wanted to feel important. I let her finish. Then I told her that I did not need to feel important. I told her I needed to be responsible. I told her the company employed people who trusted our stability. I told her that rushing control changes was not responsibility. Lana's voice stayed controlled, but her eyes grew colder. She said if I refused, the board could still act. She said I was not the only factor. She said there were ways to reduce my influence without my cooperation, and she said she did not want to do it that way. It was almost a threat, wrapped in polite language. I looked at Eric. I asked him if he agreed with that approach. I asked him if he planned to push his own father aside through pressure. Eric's face turned pale. He said he did not want pressure. He said he wanted peace. He said this was hard for him too. He said he loved me. He also said he needed to think about Max and their future. Hearing my son talk like that did not make me angry. It made me clear. The fog of grief and confusion had been hiding one simple fact. Eric was not leading his life right now. He was being carried by someone else's ambition. I told them the visit was over. I said we could continue the conversation after I spoke to Patricia. I stood up first. That small act changed the room. Lana closed her folder with sharp motions. Eric gathered his bag like a man waking from a bad dream. Before leaving, Lana said she hoped I would be reasonable. She said she did not want anyone to think I was becoming difficult. She said people talked. I told her people always talked. I told her I would still do things properly. After they left, I sat down again and stared at the closed door. The living room felt different, like it had been used for something ugly. I picked up the teacup I had made and realized I had not taken a single sip. I did not call Eric back. I did not chase them. I did not send a long message. I called Patricia. Patricia answered with a calm voice, the kind that does not change under pressure. I told her what happened in my living room. I told her Lana brought documents and tried to rush me. I told her they implied the board could move without me. Patricia told me to come to her office the next morning. She told me to bring any old binders or notes Helena kept about the company's structure. She told me not to sign anything, not even a small page. She said I had done the correct thing by stopping. That night, I went into my home study. It was a small room with shelves, a desk, and a safe behind a framed photo. Helena and I kept the safe for important papers. Not because we were dramatic, but because paper can hold a life together. I opened the safe and took out Helena's binder. It was thick and worn at the corners. I set it on the desk and ran my hand over the cover, like I was greeting an old friend. I did not open it right away. I just sat there and listened to the quiet. Then I opened it and saw Helena's handwriting on sticky notes. Short reminders, names, dates. Simple instructions, like she was guiding me even now. In the morning, I drove to Patricia's office. The building was plain and professional. The waiting room smelled like paper and coffee. Patricia greeted me with a firm handshake and led me to a small meeting room. I placed Helena's binder on the table. Patricia opened it carefully, flipping through sections as if she already knew the map. She paused at certain pages and made small notes. She asked me to describe the restaurant dinner again. She asked who was present, what Lana said, and how Eric reacted. She asked me about the living room meeting and the documents Lana brought. She asked if anyone had recorded anything or sent follow-up emails. I told her I did not record. I told her I only had my memory and the meeting invite Jenna printed. I told her I could ask Jenna for copies of agendas and emails if needed. Patricia listened without interrupting. Then she closed the binder and leaned forward slightly. She told me Helena had planned for pressure like this. She told me Helena did not like rushing, and Helena did not like disrespect. Patricia said Helena insisted on certain protections years ago, long before the illness, when she noticed how easily people could change around money. Patricia explained that the company ownership was not as simple as Lana believed. She said Helena's side of the ownership was held through a structure designed to protect stability. She said that structure had rules about behavior and about family line. She did not read the wording to me like a performance. She summarized it in plain terms. She told me the structure recognized my role as trustee and decision anchor, not a decoration. She told me there were conditions that could limit or remove someone's benefit if they tried to force me aside while I was still living and competent. She told me Helena saw respect as a real requirement, not a nice idea. When Patricia said that, I felt something I had not felt in weeks. Not joy, not revenge, just a sense of solid ground. Patricia asked me if I had any reason to doubt certain family facts. She asked it gently, like a doctor asking about symptoms. I understood what she meant. I thought of that hospital moment, the casual remark, Helena's eyes changing. I told Patricia about the doctor's comment during the hospital visit. I told her Helena went quiet and squeezed my hand. I told her Helena never explained it, but she told me to be steady and not let anyone rush me. Patricia's face became serious. She did not accuse anyone. She did not make dramatic statements. She simply said if Helena built conditions around family line, there was usually a reason. She said there were legal ways to request records and verify certain facts, but it had to be done carefully and properly. Then she told me what to do next, in simple steps. She told me to stop discussing control issues at home without her present. She told me to keep every email, calendar invite, and agenda that showed Lana trying to shape my role. She told me to write down dates and names while my memory was fresh. She told me to let Lana think I was slow and tired if that made her careless. She told me that my calm was not weakness. She said calm was a tool. When I left Patricia's office, the air outside felt colder, but I felt steadier. I did not feel like a man being pushed off a cliff anymore. I felt like a man walking back to his own desk. That evening, I returned to my home study and opened a clean notebook page. I wrote down the restaurant dinner date. I wrote down the names of the board members present. I wrote down the living room meeting and what documents Lana brought. I wrote down the words she used about reducing my influence. I did not write angry thoughts. I wrote facts. Then I closed the notebook, locked Helena's binder back in the safe, and sat quietly for a long time. I understood something simple. They thought my silence meant I had nothing. They thought my grief made me easy to move. They thought I would sign whatever they placed in front of me because I wanted peace. But peace without respect is not peace. It is surrender. And I was done surrendering. In the week after my meeting with Patricia, I changed how I moved through my days. I still did the same tasks. I still answered calls. I still showed up at the office. But inside, I stopped hoping things would fix themselves. Patricia told me to keep my tone steady and let the pattern show itself. That sounded simple, but it took discipline. When someone tries to push you into a corner, the normal instinct is to argue. I did not argue. I documented. I started with small things. At the office, I asked Jenna to forward me every calendar invite that involved transition, succession, or structure. I did not explain why. I told her I wanted my schedule clean and accurate. Jenna understood more than I said. She began placing printed agendas on my desk with a quiet look, like she was passing me something valuable without making noise. I also began writing down meetings in my notebook the moment they ended. Date, time, who spoke, what was decided, what words were used. It was not emotional writing, it was a log. When I walked the operations floor, I listened more than I spoke. People reveal more when they think you are harmless. Lana had convinced many that I was stepping back. That idea made some people careless. One afternoon, I stood near a display board where project timelines were posted. 2 managers spoke nearby, thinking I was focused on the board. One of them said Lana was already promising changes to vendors, as if she had full authority. The other said it felt risky, but that Eric kept agreeing to everything at home and then bringing it to work like it was already decided. I did not turn my head quickly. I did not react. I waited until they walked away, then I wrote a short note in my notebook. Vendor promises. Authority assumed, names mentioned. Later that day, I attended a small meeting in the conference room. Lana led it, even though she was not a company officer. She spoke in polished phrases about efficiency and modern leadership. She said the company needed a single voice, and she said too many voices created confusion. When I asked how she planned to keep checks and balances, she smiled and said, checks and balances were important, but speed mattered more in the current market. She looked around the room as if everyone would agree. A few people nodded without thinking. Others stared at their papers. Eric sat beside her, quiet. He did not interrupt. He did not add nuance. He looked like he was waiting for the meeting to end so he could avoid a real conversation. Afterward, I returned to my office and stared at Helena's photo for a long moment. I could almost hear her voice telling me that speed without wisdom is just movement. I did not say it out loud. I simply opened my drawer and placed the meeting agenda into a growing folder. That folder became my new habit. It sat on the lower shelf, plain and boring, the kind of thing no one notices. A few days later, I met Patricia again. This time, the meeting was more structured. She did most of the talking, but not in a dramatic way. She explained what I could request, how I could request it, and what timelines mattered. She reminded me that we were not trying to punish anyone through emotion. We were protecting what Helena built through systems. I asked her if I needed to warn Eric or Lana. Patricia told me not to warn anyone. She said warning only gives people time to rewrite their steps. She said the best path was to let them keep believing their story. I left her office and drove to a trust office with her. The building was quiet and clean, full of glass and soft lighting. People spoke in low voices. I sat at a table with a trust officer who looked at me like I was a normal client, not a family drama. I did not bring a speech. I brought calm questions. I asked how trustee contact changes were confirmed. I asked how meetings were recorded. I asked how notices were delivered. The trust officer explained the process in neutral language. Patricia nodded at certain points and made notes. I did not request anything that would draw attention. I simply made sure I understood the terrain. When we left, Patricia told me this was what stability looked like. Not yelling, not pressure, just clarity. Back at the company, Lana grew bolder. She began acting like the boardroom was her stage. She told a marketing team to draft a new company profile that featured Eric and her as the modern face. She asked for updated headshots and suggested that my photo should be in a heritage section. She used words like heritage and legacy as if they were soft pillows. But I heard the meaning underneath. I asked Jenna for the draft profile when it appeared in the internal system. She hesitated, then printed it and placed it in my folder without speaking. I glanced at it and saw how my role was reduced to one sentence near the bottom. I did not confront Lana. I simply placed it in the folder. Omar, our CFO, asked me to meet him at a cafe near the office. It was a small place with simple tables and quiet music. Omar arrived early and sat with his back to the window, an old habit from years of negotiation meetings. He asked how I was holding up. Omar did not ask it like a polite greeting. He asked it like a man checking if a friend was still standing. I told him I was functioning. I told him the company was stable, and I wanted it to stay stable. Omar nodded, then told me what he had been seeing. He said Lana was demanding access to financial dashboards that were normally limited to officers. He said she was pressing him to approve future spending that had not been discussed by the board. He said she framed it as urgent, and she framed any hesitation as outdated thinking. I asked him what Eric said about it. Omar said Eric looked tired and avoided hard decisions. He said Eric would often say they would talk at home and then come back the next day with Lana's answer. I told Omar I appreciated his honesty. I did not ask him to choose sides. I did not ask him to act against anyone. I simply asked him to keep doing his job correctly and keep his records clean. Omar understood what I meant. He said he always kept his records clean. Then he said something that stayed with me. He said people who want to rush you usually want to skip a step that protects you. That night, I returned home and found a message in the family group chat. Lana had written a cheerful note about a big meeting coming soon, and she told relatives that we would finally close the loop on succession. She used friendly emojis and warm words, like she was planning a birthday, not a takeover. Marianne replied with a short line saying Helena valued patience. Lana replied with a smile and said patience was good, but action was better. I did not reply. I saved the message. The next day, Eric stopped by my house alone. He sat on the edge of my living room chair like a visitor, not a son. He said he wanted things to be smooth. He said Lana was stressed. He said everyone was watching the company. I asked him a simple question. I asked him if he believed Lana's restaurant speech was respectful. Eric looked down. He said she did not mean harm. He said she was thinking about Max. He said she thought she was helping. I asked him another question. I asked him if he wanted his father to be managed like a problem. Eric's face tightened. He said no. Then he said he did not know what to do. He said when he tries to slow Lana down, she tells him he is weak and that he does not protect his family. I did not argue with him. I told him that protection is not the same as control. I told him that real leadership includes limits. I told him I loved him, but I would not sign away stability to avoid discomfort. Eric nodded, but he looked like a man trapped between two doors. After he left, I went to my study and opened the safe. I did not take Helena's binder out this time. I simply checked it was still there, still locked, still safe. Then I closed the safe and sat at my desk. I began organizing my folders with simple labels: meetings, emails, agendas, public statements, internal drafts. I did not label anything with emotional words. I labeled them like an accountant would. At the office, Lana started scheduling more formal events. She wanted a staged moment. I could feel it. She began asking Jenna to reserve the main boardroom for a family and board alignment session. She asked for the room with the glass wall, the big table, the best lighting. She wanted witnesses. She also began inviting outsiders, like it would add weight to her performance. She mentioned bringing her parents as moral support. She suggested inviting a consultant again to confirm the plan. I watched all of it without reacting. I let her build her own stage. In the background, I made small positioning moves that looked like routine. I met department leads and asked standard questions about operations. I returned a few client calls personally and thanked them for their patience during a time of change. I did not speak badly about anyone. I only spoke about continuity and professionalism. Some clients sounded relieved to hear my voice. They told me they had been hearing confusing messages. They said they did not know who was truly in charge. I told them the company would communicate clearly soon. I kept it simple. By the end of that week, Jenna brought me the final agenda for the inheritance and succession meeting. It was printed on thick paper, as if it was already a certificate. My name appeared, but not where it should have been. I was placed under attendance, like a guest. I stared at the page for a long time. Then I put it into my folder. I did not feel panic. I did not feel rage. I felt something closer to focus. They thought the meeting would be the moment they completed the story they had been telling. I understood it would be a moment, yes, just not the moment they expected. The week before, the meeting felt strange. On the outside, my days looked normal. I woke up, drank tea, drove to the company, and answered questions. On the inside, I was working with a different kind of attention. Every small detail mattered. Every date mattered. I stopped thinking in feelings and started thinking in steps. Patricia told me to keep things simple. She said I did not need to fight with words. She said the system would do the speaking when the time came. She also told me to avoid private paper talks with Lana and Eric. She said if they wanted to discuss anything formal, it would happen in the correct setting. That advice helped me more than I expected. It gave me a clean line. When Lana tried to pull me into side conversations, I could stay calm and end them without drama. At home, Lana became more confident. She started acting like the house was already a waiting room for my exit. She used warm words, but the meaning stayed cold. She would mention your comfort and your rest in the same breath as new structure and final transition. One evening, she arrived with Eric and Max and brought a box of pastries. She placed them on the kitchen counter as if she was being kind. Then she started talking about the upcoming meeting. She said it would be good to make it smooth and clean. She said the board wanted to see unity. She said people would worry if I looked stubborn. She said she wanted to protect my image. I told her my image was not the priority. I told her the company's stability was the priority. She smiled and said stability was exactly why we needed change. She said the market did not like uncertainty. She said we should finish it quickly so people could relax. Eric stood near the fridge and did not speak. He looked tired. He looked like a man who slept next to stress. Max asked me if I would sit beside him at the big meeting. He said he wanted to see the important table. I told him we would see. I did not want a child to feel like a pawn, even if adults were acting like it. After they left, I cleaned the kitchen slowly and returned to my study. I opened my notebook and wrote down what Lana said, word for word as best as I could. Not because I enjoyed it, because facts become useful later, and memory becomes messy under pressure. The next morning I met Patricia again. This time she looked more focused than before. She did not act excited. She acted ready. She told me we were close to the date when everything would be formal. She said we had to make sure timing and procedure were correct. She said she had prepared what was needed, and she said I needed to follow her instructions exactly. She reminded me that calm behavior is also evidence. If I stayed steady, nobody could claim I was confused or unstable. We drove together to the trust office again. The lobby was quiet, and the air smelled like polished wood and paper. The trust officer greeted Patricia like a familiar professional. They sat us at a small table and brought water. I signed some confirmations. I did not read them like a speech. I read them like an adult who knows his responsibilities. Patricia pointed to lines, and I signed where she told me. The trust officer stamped pages and placed them into a folder. I did not carry that folder out like a trophy. It was simply part of the process. The trust officer treated it as normal, which was the point. When something is done correctly, it does not need drama. After the trust office, we went to another building where filings were handled. The space felt official but plain. There were people waiting with their own small problems, quiet and patient. I watched them and felt my own situation from a distance. We were all there because rules exist and rules matter. Patricia spoke to the clerk. She handed over forms. The clerk checked them, stamped them, and returned copies. The sound of the stamp was sharp and final. It was not emotional, but it had weight. On the way back, Patricia told me to keep my routine normal. She said if Lana sensed a sudden change in me, she might shift her behavior. Patricia said we wanted Lana to keep believing she was in control. That afternoon at the company, I acted like any other workday. I greeted staff, I checked production, I spoke with Omar briefly about cash flow and supplier timing. Omar asked if I was okay without saying the real question out loud. I told him I was steady. Omar nodded once, like that was enough. Jenna brought me a printed copy of the boardroom setup plan. Lana had requested specific seating. Lana wanted herself close to the front. She wanted Eric on her right. She wanted me positioned slightly away, like a guest. Jenna looked embarrassed as she placed it on my desk. I told Jenna she did a good job. I told her she should not worry about the seating chart. I said people can place chairs anywhere they want, but they cannot change facts by moving furniture. Jenna's eyes softened, and she left quietly. Later, I received an email from Lana that was written in a careful, friendly tone. She said she wanted to make sure I felt included. She said she had arranged a nice introduction for me at the meeting. She said I could say a few words about the company's roots, and then we could all focus on the future. It sounded like a planned performance. I saved the email into my folder. I did not reply with anger. I replied with one sentence. I said I would attend the meeting and follow the agenda. In the days that followed, Lana became even more relaxed. She started talking openly about changes she wanted to make after the meeting. She told a manager she would restructure teams. She told a supplier contact that approvals would be faster soon. She told someone in marketing that the new leadership image was about to be official. People who should have waited for formal decisions were already behaving as if those decisions were done. That told me something important. It told me how sure Lana felt. It also told me how many people were willing to follow the person who spoke with confidence. At home, Eric called me one night. His voice sounded quiet and strained. He said he wanted me to understand that he did not want to hurt me. He said he felt stuck. He said Lana kept telling him that a good husband puts his household first. I told him I understood pressure. I told him being a husband and father is serious. I also told him that being a son is serious. I told him those roles do not have to fight each other if people act with respect. Eric was silent for a long moment. Then he said he wished Mom was here. He said she would know what to say. I told him Helena planned more than he knew. I did not explain. I did not threaten. I simply said she planned, and she trusted process. I told him to sleep if he could. After the call, I sat in my living room with the lights low and listened to the house. Some people think quiet means emptiness. For me, quiet means I can hear myself think. The day before the meeting, Marianne visited. She brought soup and a small plant for the window. She sat at my kitchen table and looked at me like a sister looks at family, without pretending. She said Lana had been telling relatives that everything was settled and that I was finally accepting reality. Marianne said she did not like the way Lana spoke, like I was not a person, only a stage in the story. I told Marianne I had heard enough to understand. I told her I would handle it properly. I told her I would not shout in front of people. I told her I would use the systems Helena trusted. Marianne nodded and squeezed my hand once. She did not ask questions. She did not demand details. That was a kind of respect, too. That night, I went into my study and checked my folders one last time. I did not read everything again. I simply made sure it was organized. I made sure dates were clear. I made sure everything was in the order Patricia asked for. I also laid out a plain suit for the morning, not because I wanted to impress anyone, because I wanted no distractions. I wanted the room to see a calm man who knew where he stood. On the morning of the meeting, I ate a simple breakfast. I did not feel hungry, but I ate anyway. I drank water. I took my time tying my shoes. I did not rush. At the company, the hallway near the boardroom felt different. People moved more carefully. Voices were lower. The glass walls reflected the lights, and the long table inside looked like a stage. I saw staff adjusting chairs and placing water bottles. I saw Lana's assistant carrying a stack of printed agendas. When I arrived, Lana was already there. She wore a sharp outfit and a confident smile. She greeted board members like a host. She touched Eric's arm lightly as if to remind him where he belonged. She saw me and smiled as if nothing had happened in my living room, as if the restaurant speech was only friendly planning. I greeted people politely and took my seat without comment. Patricia arrived shortly after. She walked in with a firm, quiet presence. She carried a professional folder and a sealed envelope. She did not look at Lana for long. She greeted the board with calm respect and sat down. Omar was there too, sitting with his notes. Jenna stood near the side wall, ready to support the meeting. Marianne sat near the back, quiet and watchful. Lana glanced around as if she was counting bodies, checking that her audience was complete. Then she looked toward the front of the room and adjusted her posture. I sat still, hands folded, and watched the clock move forward 1 minute at a time. The boardroom felt colder than usual, even though the heating was on. The glass walls made every movement look bigger. Lana sat close to the head of the table, shoulders back, a practiced smile on her face. Eric sat beside her, hands clasped, eyes moving from person to person like he was trying to predict which way the room would lean. Omar had his notebook open. Jenna stood near the side wall with extra copies of the agenda. Marianne sat behind the board members, quiet and still. Lana started the meeting like she owned it. She thanked everyone for coming and spoke about continuity, confidence, and the next chapter. She spoke about my years of work as if those years were a finished museum exhibit. She said it was time to make everything official so the company would be secure for Max. Then she turned toward me with the kind of smile people use when they expect you to cooperate. She slid a prepared handover packet across the table and said it was a simple formality. She said everyone would feel better once I signed. I did not touch the packet. I looked at the board members instead and said I wanted Helena's actual instructions read first. I kept my voice calm, like I was asking to confirm a number on a report. Lana's smile did not move, but her eyes narrowed. She said Helena would have wanted the company in the family line and that we were all doing what Helena would have wanted. She said we should not turn the day into a procedural delay. Patricia did not react to Lana's tone. She placed her folder on the table, opened it, and asked the chair for permission to read a document into the record. The chair hesitated for a moment, then nodded. That small nod shifted the room. Patricia said Helena and I had set up a formal structure years ago to protect the company from rushed decisions. She said Helena's ownership was held through that structure and that I was the acting trustee with clear authority. She placed a bank confirmation page on the table, time-marked and signed by a trust officer. showing the trustee status and the current standing instructions. Lana leaned forward and said it was outdated and that the board could still vote. Patricia answered, still calm, that the structure was active and that trustee authority was not a suggestion. She said the board could vote on operations, but it could not override a trust that held controlling shares. I watched Lana's face for the first real crack. It came as a tiny pause in her breathing. Patricia continued. She said Helena included 2 conditions that mattered today. The first condition was about conduct. She said Helena required ongoing respectful treatment of the trustee while he was alive and competent. She said the structure allowed consequences if someone tried to push me aside through pressure, public disrespect, or forced paperwork. Lana made a small sound, like a short laugh, and said that was vague. Patricia answered by listing specific examples, in simple, factual language. She referenced the dinner speech in front of relatives and 2 board members, where Lana presented my role as finished and described an allowance for me as if I needed permission to exist. She referenced internal drafts that reduced my role to a ceremonial note. She referenced meeting language about removing founder dependency. She referenced messages that framed me as an obstacle to be moved. Patricia did not read every page. She did not need to. She showed enough for the board to understand that this was not one awkward moment. It was a pattern with dates. Eric's face tightened. He looked at Lana as if he was seeing her from a new distance. Lana stared straight ahead, jaw locked. Patricia then said Helena added a second condition. She said the inheritance path depended on a confirmed family link. She said Helena insisted on this condition because she believed clarity mattered when assets could shape a child's future. Patricia said this condition was not personal, it was structural. It was written to remove uncertainty. Lana's posture shifted for the first time. She asked what that had to do with today. She said Max was Eric's son, and everyone knew it. Patricia did not argue. She reached into her folder and took out a sealed envelope, still closed. She placed it on the table and explained step by step how the verification was obtained through proper consent routes and documented chain of custody. She said it was processed by an accredited lab. She said it was not gossip. It was a formal report. The room went very quiet. Even Jenna stopped moving. Patricia opened the envelope and removed a single-page summary report, then a longer packet behind it. She looked at the chair and asked if she should read the key finding aloud. The chair nodded again, slower this time. Patricia read the conclusion in plain language. She stated that the test did not support a biological match between Eric and Max. I saw Eric's hands loosen and then grip the edge of the table. His eyes went wide, then unfocused, like his mind was trying to reject the sentence. He looked at Patricia, then at me, then at Lana. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Lana's face changed in stages. First confusion, then a sharp flash of anger, then a controlled mask that did not quite fit anymore. She said it was impossible. She said the lab must be wrong. She said this was an attack. Patricia did not debate. She pointed to the lab identifiers and verification steps and said any challenge would follow formal procedures, but the report as presented triggered the trust condition as written. She said the structure could not treat Max as a qualifying heir through Eric for Helena's controlling shares because the family link requirement was not met. Eric finally spoke, voice low and shaken. He asked Lana to explain. He asked her when. He asked her how she could let him stand in front of people and plan a future on something untrue. Lana tried to speak, but her words tangled. She said she was protecting the family. She said it did not change how they lived. She said the company should still be theirs because they were the real future. Patricia turned to the board and explained the consequence. She said the trust redirected Helena's controlling shares away from the line that failed the conditions. She said those shares would move according to Helena's written instructions, including a portion set aside for an employee benefit fund and a portion reserved for alternative family beneficiaries, with trustee oversight already confirmed. Then she addressed the immediate point of the meeting. She said the handover packet Lana brought was not valid because it assumed ownership and authority that Lana and Eric did not hold. She said any attempt to force me into signing would now be part of the record supporting the conduct violation. The chair asked Omar for confirmation of the current ownership structure on file. Omar, steady and pale, confirmed what Patricia said. He said the company's records matched the trust's control pathway and that the board could not simply hand over what was not personally held. Lana pushed her chair back slightly, as if she might stand and regain control through movement. The chair asked her to remain seated. Lana looked around the room and realized no one was following her lead anymore. Eric lowered his head into his hands for a moment. When he looked up, his eyes were wet, but his voice was firm in a new way. He told the chair he needed to step out of the meeting and requested an immediate leave from operational decisions until the personal situation was clarified. The chair agreed. Patricia slid a short resolution document toward the chair and board members. She said it formalized acknowledgement of trustee authority and suspended any succession action based on Lana's proposed packet. One by one, board members signed in silence. When the last signature was placed, the chair asked Lana to leave the boardroom, not as a punishment speech, just as a procedural step. Jenna quietly opened the glass door. A building manager stood nearby, ready to guide her out. Lana stood, face tight, and looked at me like she wanted a reaction she could use. I did not give her one. I simply watched as she walked out, heels clicking once, then fading down the hallway. Patricia gathered the report and the signed pages into her folder. Omar closed his notebook. Eric remained seated, staring at the table like it had become something unfamiliar. I placed my hands on the edge of Helena's binder, closed it gently, and let the room sit in the truth Helena had prepared.